The first domino of the Carolina Panthers offseason has officially fallen as they have announced that they promoted assistant general manager Dan Morgan to general manager and director of football operations, which was vacated by Scott Fitterer. Of course, Dan Morgan is a Carolina Panthers legend and spent time on the team from 2001 to 2007. The former first-round draft pick was legit and can't be questioned for his ability on the field. Off the field, he spent some time working with the Seattle Seahawks organization, also with the Buffalo Bills organization, before coming over to Carolina in 2021 to be the assistant of Scott Fitterer. Over the weekend, reports came out they had quietly started to move into the second round of interviews, and a couple names were still floated out there. But once Dan Morgan's name was mentioned a little bit, I think things happened fairly fast and fans started to kind of get a feeling about what may be coming. And Monday, they made things official by announcing Dan Morgan as the new general manager. So in this video today, we're going to talk about what this means for the team, the implications going forward, and why David Tepper will never learn. We got all that and more, and we're starting right now. What up, those? Aaron Duncan here with the Necessary Blunt, the sports talk recap and analysis of the Carolina Panthers is what goes down on this channel. So make sure you are subscribed and hit that bell icon, because there's all kind of crazy stuff that's going to be happening this offseason as we're hiring a coach. We just got the GM, and apparently there's going to be more moves to that front office. So make sure you are subscribed down below. Hit the bell icon so you get the notifications of me staying on top of it. Like I said, there's still more changes expected to happen. Even though the Panthers had announced that some of the finalists were Brandon Brown, the assistant general manager of the New York Giants, and also Alec Hellaby, assistant general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles, there was one name floated around that could still be added, and that's the VP of football operations from the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's Brant Tillis. Apparently, David Tepper wants to divide duties of the head person in charge and kind of have it like corporate America, where there's a CFO who deals with the financial stuff, which would be the guy from the Chiefs, and a COO who deals with the operational stuff and the football stuff, which would be Dan Morgan. You know, David Tepper has this hedge fund background, so he wants to try to bring that stuff over to football, because apparently if you're a billionaire off the field, that means you can be successful on the field, even though he hasn't been to the playoffs in the 6 years that he's on the team. Regardless, we got reports out that David Tepper actually was the captain of the search. Even though he hired a third-party consulting firm, reports say that him, his wife Nicole, Christy Coleman, and a couple other names also kind of led the search in unison, in partnership with Sportsology. So it wasn't really the third-party firm really just kind of leading the charge. They were kind of holding their hand and making sure David Tepper tried to do things the right way. So apparently David Tepper hired this third-party firm, and I don't know exactly how the dynamic typically works, but it seemed like he just wanted another voice in his ear to kind of help him do the right thing, or it was just semantics and PR to make the fans feel better about how this thing did. But I know some skeptical fans probably feel like with the narrative that's come out, it's just more of the same old with David Tepper trying to do things outside the box, not the right way that other teams that have had success have done things. So things really got fishy for me when I heard that Dan Morgan was actually sitting in on head coaching interviews before they even announced he was the GM. That lets me know that he was probably going to be a part of this organization one way or the other, whether he was the head guy or some kind of assistant down the line. And to be clear, I really don't have a problem with Dan Morgan, the person. He could be a phenomenal GM on his own. So what once was thought to be cleaning house in the front office turned out to be that they just got rid of Scott Fitterer. And it's so weird to me, because everything that we heard about the process, that the way this front office worked before, was collaboration. Everybody had a voice. Everybody liked working together. Everybody came together and made these decisions. So if that's the case, with the way things are being structured now, why does it seem like Scott Fitterer is the only one with blood on his hands and he's being the scapegoat? If everybody had something to do with what this mess is of a team right now, everybody should be able to get that pink slip like Scott Fitterer did. So I'm not really sure why you retain people from a 2-15 team. Now, I understand the pushback from some fans that want to play devil's advocate and say that we had David Gettleman and his assistant was Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane then went on to Buffalo to run his own team, partnered up with Sean McDermott, and they've been a perennial AFC contender. And I hear you. But in my opinion, with the team that has not hired a head coach and a GM at the same time in the same offseason in over 20 years, this was a time to turn the page, clean the slate, and start fresh and do things the right way. This kind of funk has aged back even before David Tepper. Like I said, it goes back over 20 years. So this seemed like the first time that a franchise as young as the Panthers had a chance to get things right and get everybody on the same page. But like that things always happen here. When you have a chance to go right, things tend to go left with David Tepper. And just Dan Morgan on his own, man. He's a legend, so I want to be respectfully when I talk about this because he could end up being a phenomenal GM for us. I'm going to be rooting for him. I'm not rooting against him. I'm not one of those type of fans. It's just frustrating to hear how this came about. Reports from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport say that Dan Morgan was probably David Tepper's guy the whole time. So this coach GM search was just kind of like, not a sham, but what was the reason? You know what I'm saying? What was the extensive search for? It couldn't have been that extensive if you always had a favorite who had an inside track from the jump. This is not being turning over every stone, listening to everything. This is you. Hey, I have who I want to. Let me just see what's out there. If I can find better, I'll stick with the guy that I want. Why is he the guy that you want? Do you feel like he's a yes man? Do you feel like y'all get along good? What is the reason? And I'm not even trying to slight, like I said, Dan Morgan, but this is just some of the thoughts that come in your head when you're dealing with a owner like David Tepper, how we've seen how he's operated in the past. It's really, really frustrating for fans. Because one of the biggest gripes that we've had over the years is that the Panthers don't hit on picks after day one of the draft, and even day one has been suspect at times. So to retain the guy that was over the college scouting there, it just seems silly. And when you have the scouts saying that they're happy to work with him, they should be. Because they should feel fortunate that that the scapegoat is out of the building now. They're able to keep their jobs and keep it pushing. I don't know, man. It just feels suspect as a fan to hear these moves being made, and I don't see how you can really push back on people that are skeptical of this move. I don't think anybody's really just going crazy and pulling their hair out because it's just a general manager move. They're more concerned about the head coach, of course. But David Tepper has done nothing to earn the benefit of the doubt since owning this team, so I don't think you can really demonize fans for questioning these moves and how things went about, because it really just sounds like same old-ish, just a different day. But like I said, I'm rooting for Dan. I hope he gets it right. He's a part of the regime that brought in Bryce Young and assembled this roster that was around Bryce Young that wanted to get Bryce Young. Obviously, he's a supporter of Bryce Young. That probably carries some weight as well versus outside party that may want to move on from Bryce after a few years. So I'm sure that was at play as well. But it's just a weird situation, man. I hope we get things right. I hope we get the coaching hire right. The last nugget is that with Dan Morgan being hired, he has some background with a few Kenners that we interviewed, like Dan Quinn and also Dave Canales from the Tampa Bay Bucks. So pay attention to those two guys maybe having an inside track on potentially being the next head coach of the Panthers. Regardless, we will see what happens as those second interviews for coaches ramp up. Of course, I will be on top of it when that news breaks. Without further ado, yes, let me know down below in the comments, how do you feel about Dan Morgan being promoted from assistant GM to head GM? And how do you feel about David Tepper still heading the search for this thing and Dan being his guy the whole time? Do you feel like it's same old? Are you cautiously optimistic? Are you optimistic? Are you just like, man, we're cooked? Let me know how you feel down below in the comments. But make sure you also are subscribed so we can get this thing popping for future videos. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.